What's up, guys? We finally got the 2JZ painted and ready for assembly. But before we can do that, we need to clean up the head, and I have new valve stem seals for it. So we're going to take all the valves out, get the head cleaned up, and replace the seals. Okay, so the first thing we need to do with the head is take all the buckets out. We'll just use a magnet for those. But first you want to make sure you label them all, intake and exhaust, because they're all shimmed to a certain spec, so they need to go back where they came from. Okay guys, so to take the valves off, we have this valve spring compressing tool. I got this off Amazon for like $30 or $40. I'll put a link in the description, but I'll show you how it works here. So you've got this side goes around the spring in the retainer, and then this side down here goes up against the actual valve on the bottom. So I'll put it on here like this over the spring, and then the bottom side will compress against the valve. You need to adjust the tool so it only compresses the spring a little bit, and then when you push down on this handle, it'll lock into place like that. Then you can take a magnet, pull out your keepers, set those inside of our bucket, and then we can take the tool off. And then you've got the top hat and the spring. Then you just push on the valve and pull it out from the bottom. So we'll get all the rest of them taken off, and then we'll show you how to change the seals. Action. All right, so to pull out the old valve seals, you just use some needle nose pliers. You reach down in there and get a good grip on it, and then you just have to wiggle them and pull, and then they'll come out. So we're going to do that. We'll take out all the seals, and then we'll start cleaning up the head and all the valves. Okay guys, we got the head soaking here in oven cleaner. So we're going to let that soak, and then we're going to hose that down. And then Michael's over here working on the valves. We're just taking a drill and some 320 grit sandpaper. So you can just stick the valve in the drill to spin it, and then just use the sandpaper to clean it up. We're using a little ATF as a cleaning detergent, and then after we sand it, we'll buff it with a Scotch-Brite pad, and that should be good. So we got the head pretty clean. Could be better, but should work fine. Got all the valves cleaned up. So now we're ready to put on the seals. The seals are different for intake and exhaust, so we need to make sure we put them on the right side. And they should just pop on just like how we took them off. Just stick them in there and pop them on. Push them on there as far as they'll go. Okay, we got all the new seals in. So now we can take the valves and stick those in through the bottom. We're going to clean them up first. Stick those in there like that. Okay, so we got all the valves in here. Now we can put the springs and retainers back on using the valve removal tool. It's just the opposite. Put the spring on and then clamp it down. So put those in there, clamp it down, and then you can take your retainers and put those in.
Good luck.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've seen people do this with magnets before, but I don't know how the fuck they do it. Do they put them in with magnets, or do they put them in with pliers? Oh my god. How many times do you think I'm gonna drop it? Okay, it's day 2 of assembling the 2JZ engine. Michael and I got the head all put together yesterday. It was kind of a pain in the butt getting all the valve retainers in. These little clips here. With this valve removal tool, they make a special tool that is like a little punch tool, and you put it over the valve and the valve spring, and then you hit it with a hammer. And it pulls the keepers out, and hit it again, and it puts the keepers back in there. It's just a pain with that tool because the top hat, it's hard to get it centered over the valve stem, and it has to be perfectly centered so that you can fit the clip on both sides, or the keeper on both sides, and then you slowly let the hat back up, and then the keepers stay in place. But anyways, we finally got them all done. It would have been really hard to do it with just one person, so I was glad to have help with that. But now that we have all the valve springs back in, I went ahead and put all the buckets in. I made sure I brake cleaned them all first, and then put some assembly lube on them. So as you can see, there's no longer numbers written on here with Sharpie because the brake clean took that off. So make sure when you're doing this step, you do it little by little and keep track of them. Each one of these buckets has a different size shim on the top to adjust your valve lash, so you have to make sure you put them back where they go. So we've got all those in place. Now we can get the head put on the block. And next we have the head gasket. I'm using a factory Toyota 2JZ GTE head gasket. So this is going to be a little thicker than the GE head gasket, which is going to lower our compression, which is good for boosted applications. These GTE head gaskets are multi-layer steel, and they hold up to 1,000 horsepower regularly. So they're definitely good enough for our application. They're a little bit hard to find, and they're a little expensive, but they're about the same price as any aftermarket head gasket. So you might as well stick with the tried and true factory. I got this one off Drift Motion. And there's only one way these fit on. So I'll just get it so that everything lines up. Okay, now it's time for the ARP head studs. So these are the 203-4205 Toyota Supra head stud kit. And you're gonna read the instructions that come with the ARP head studs for installing these because it can vary from the manufacturer specifications. So make sure you read the instructions for those and do it the way the ARP recommends. Okay, so ARP says to screw these studs into the block first, hand tight only, making sure you use some of their lubricant on the threads. Okay, so there's a little recess in the head that the washer sits in. So I got them all lubricated as instructed by ARP, and then I dropped them in the hole and used a screwdriver to get them lined up in their recess. So now we should be ready to put the head on. Okay, so here's our torque sequence here. So this is the front of the engine. Where the two cam gears are. So we're going to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. And we're going to do them in this order in 3 steps up to 80 foot-pounds as recommended by ARP. Okay, we got the head torqued down. So now it's time to install the cams. We can make sure we install some, make sure we put some assembly lube, mainly where the cam rides in the head. Okay, so installing the cam caps is kind of a complicated process. I'll insert a picture here from the service manual. But basically, you have to tighten all the caps, rotate the cams, loosen some of the caps, and then retighten them, and go back and forth, tightening, rotating, tightening, rotating. So we'll do that, and then, like I said, I'll insert a picture of the service manual, and I'll also give you a link to a website where you can look at the PDF of the service manual. Okay, we got the number 3 and 7 cam caps installed, just hand tightened until they're flush with the head. Now we need to put on the cam seals. So the first thing we'll do is put a little bit of dielectric grease on the inside of the seal, and then we'll slide those on. Okay, so for the 2 front caps, they need silicone on them to seal those. So we're using Permatex Ultra Gray, and now we can install those. Okay guys, I got the valve covers painted, but I'm not very happy with the color. It's more of like a Barney purple rather than a darker purple like the roll cage. So I think I'm gonna get try to get some paint that matches better. But we're gonna move on. So we've got the head bolted on, valve covers, the cams, and everything are bolted on. So now we need to do the oil pump. So let's get to that. There's 2 O-rings in here that we need to replace. You can find those on Drift Motion. All right, now I need a new front main seal. Probably should have done this when the oil pump was off. Would have been a little easier, but at least I took the old one out first. So we'll put a little bit of dielectric grease inside the seal, help it seal up a little better, and then we'll install it. And make a special installer tool for this, but if you have the right size of PVC, that works too. It shouldn't take much to get it in there, just some light taps. Okay, next up is the water pump. We've got a new O-ring for that. This O-ring came with the new water pump, so you don't need to worry about buying one of these. Okay, now we've got a new timing belt pulley. Need to make sure we don't forget the washer that goes on the back side, and we need to put a little bit of thread locker on the threads. You do not want this bolt coming out. And now we've got a new hydraulic tensioner. Obviously, we don't want to pull the pin on it until we have the timing belt and everything installed and finished. So we'll just install this now and leave the pin in. Okay, I got the timing belt cover put on, as well as the crank pulley. They're not too hard to put on. Timing belt cover, you just have to bolt on, making sure that the timing belt goes through the slots on each side. And then the pulley, as long as it goes on pretty easy, you can just use the bolt to tighten it down. And usually they'll slide on pretty easy. So I've got that on, and our sub-timing mark lines up with the 0 as specified by the service manual. So now we can go ahead and put on cam gears, starting with the VVTi side. Okay, and then for the VVTi plug, we've got a new seal. So we'll just stick that on there. And this one only needs to be about 15 foot-pounds. That's good. Okay, I got the timing belt on. It's kind of a pain to slide it onto the gears. It's a pretty snug fit, but if you just work at it, you can get it on. So you can see down here we have the crank. This is the sub timing mark, and then the normal timing mark is over here. So you want the sub timing mark on 0, and then you want the 2 dots on the gears, not the lines. You want the dots to line up with these little nubs here. And it looks off from the front if you try to line up the dot with the nub. So the easiest way is just to come back here and see this tooth is the one with the dot, and that's lined up right there. And then this tooth is the one with the dot, and it's lined up right there. And then rotate it a few times, make sure that they still line up, and we should be good with the timing belt. Okay, we got silicone on the upper oil pan, so we can go ahead and put that on. Okay, I got all the upper oil pan bolts torqued, so now we can go ahead and put on the baffle plate in here and the pickup tube. Make sure you have the gasket in here for the pickup tube. Alright, we got silicone on the oil pan, so we can go ahead and put that on. Okay, so now we need to attach the water neck. You have to take this thing off of the old one. There's an O-ring on each side, so you want to make sure you get new O-rings for those, and then they're just a press fit. I don't know if I can get it in there with one hand. Then we have the neck, which also needs an O-ring right here. I don't have that right now. I'll have to order it from Drift Motion, but we're just going to put it on temporarily. And now we can put the new thermostat in the water neck. This is a Mishimoto, I think it's a 160 degree thermostat. There's a part number right there. You want to make sure that the little relief on the thermostat is pointing up at the top so that air bubbles can go through it. And there's a little knob right here that's almost perfectly at the top, so we'll just line it up there. Now I'm going to stick on the front timing cover. I'm debating on painting these front covers purple to match the valve covers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I feel like it might be too much. And I'm not sure how good the paint would turn out on them. We will have to take this back off later to put the serpentine belt tensioner on, but I just want to throw it on for now. I'm also debating whether or not I should run this front cover. I think if I run this top cover, I would definitely paint it purple to match the valve covers. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. I like the look of the exposed cam gears, but at the same time it just looks like there's something missing. Okay, I got the water neck on this side, and that basically wraps up everything that I need to put on right now. I still have to put on all the sensors. Need to get the oil level sensor here, dipstick, and then oil pressure, crank knock sensors, all that. But my turbo just came in the mail today, so I really want to get the exhaust and intake manifolds on and get the turbo on and see how it looks. Wait till you guys see this turbo. This thing is huge. This is the Borg Warner S366. So it's a 6672, I believe. This should be good for at least 700 horsepower. We're shooting for 500. But I went with this turbo because Borg Warner obviously is really reliable, or is a really well-known, reputable brand. I didn't want to go with like an eBay cheap turbo. I wanted something a little better than that. And Borg Warner's turbos are really well priced. This S366 was about $600 brand new. So it should do everything we want it to do and be super reliable. I'm pumped on this thing. I got one more cool thing to show you guys, and then we'll wrap up this video. So one of the things that sucks about the GE engine compared to the GTE is it has the stupid over-the-top intake manifold that covers like the valve covers, and it just looks horrible. But it's hard to find a forward-facing intake manifold for these that's not like $600. And I don't want to spend that kind of money, so I've got the only other good alternative. This one here is about $100. Just an aluminum forward-facing intake. The biggest problem with these that everyone complains about is it uses a gasket, and it comes with this cheap like plastic gasket, to go to the runners, and especially with boosted applications, that can just be a huge leak area. You can have boost leaks all over there, and you have to bolt it onto the stock intake runners, but there's absolutely no way for you to get to these back bolts. The hole is too small. I can almost reach, but you can't get all the way in there to get to those bolts. So what a lot of people do, and what I'm going to do, is actually weld this to the runners. It is aluminum runners, so you have to be able to TIG weld if you want to do that. If you just have an NA2J and you're just trying to get a forward-facing intake manifold to look better than the top one, then this with the gasket is probably fine if you can find a way to get those back bolts tight. I've seen people drill holes here and then stick the Allen wrench through there, and then either plug it with some kind of threaded plug or a weld-in plug, but I'm just going to bolt it on right now for mock-up purposes. It's pretty sick. It doesn't look too bad for $100. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. This video is probably going to end up pretty long, so if you made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate it. All you guys watching and subscribing is really helping me and motivating me to work even harder on this thing. And I definitely underestimated how much time I was going to spend just cleaning parts. All of the aluminum stuff, the oil pans, the oil pump, the intake, all of that stuff. I pressure washed it, and then I used a wire brush on top of that. Went through like 10 cans of brake cleaner. So yeah, it took a long time, but it's turning out pretty good so far. We're making a lot of progress. Just got to button up all the sensors and everything, and figure out the cooling lines so that we can delete the heater core, so we won't be needing that. And then I need to figure out all the vacuum lines and fuel lines and all that stuff. But that'll all be coming down the road. I think the next step is going to be test fitting it in the car, and I'm curious to see if this intake manifold is going to clear the brake booster. Most likely it's not going to, so I'll have to do a brake booster delete. Once I see how it fits, I can start tearing into the engine bay, ripping out all of the stuff that I don't need, cutting off all these tabs. We're going to be building a tube front and bash bar. There's a lot of work left to do, but we're getting there slowly but surely. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment on the video, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.